Okay, good. So, first off, so we'd like to give you some updates on what has been happening with us as an initiative, Motherland, outside of South Africa, because there's some recent serendipitous developments. We would also like to share with you a little video that has been created about Motherland and get your thoughts on that. And finally, we would like to discuss that that plan document that I shared with you earlier, Herman and Reinert. Is there anything else you would like to discuss?
I had a couple of points which I actually prepared for last Monday, but because of Anciani taking a lot of time, we never covered it. But it's more geared towards, these are questions which actually I would like answers for from the African kind of cohort rather. It's had to do with connections between municipal communities and smallholder farmers and stuff like that. So if they're if you're not being joined by others specifically from South Africa, there's no point in raising them.
Okay. Well, then I would say maybe we begin with the update part.
Okay.
So we've been approached through our activities by several people, and we follow these conversations, and we just wanted to give you an update on where things seem to be thickening and emerging. So one is happening in Ghana. So this foundation that's based in London approached us with a wanting to know more about Motherland. So we shared how, the approach, and then the result was that they now would like, with a local partner they have, who runs a community of, if I'm not mistaken, 25,000 women, to also run a prototype. Do you want me to go out? I'll go over there. So that's number one, and we're in discussions and figuring out how we're gonna materialize this, if at all. So that's one. Then we have been approached by somebody in Nigeria. He's a chief of an entire area, and he would also like to work with us. This is weaker than the other one, but still is existent. So he could have potentially a good leverage in the government, but also he has a very, very strong standing in the villages he's the chief of. And finally, in Ethiopia, a young lady who has had a international career, who went back to Ethiopia and is now working in a very similar way as we do with Motherland, but with a slightly different approach. And we're also discussing how we can somehow, or whether we can somehow join forces. Sebastian, do you want to elaborate or add something I forgot, maybe?
Yeah, so we had just a call with Kume, it's her name, last Saturday, and it's still around brainstorming and understanding what they're doing. But one really important topic came up besides very similar topics we were discussing in our group for some time. Yeah, topics like market access, infrastructure, and also governance topics. And what, so to say, one area of focus, what she has, is how to figure out to build on the I don't know if ancient is the right word, but ancient types of decentralized organizational structures that were deeply rooted in the culture of Ethiopia. And she is working on how to setting up a digital enabled governance structure that could be revived in such a project, which is fairly interesting. And we are also just trying to make our heads around and reading into some of the topics she brought up. I'm not knowing what it's called. Thomas, you have that at hand? There is a specific
GADA, I think, it's a GADA system.
It's a GADA system. And I think that's interesting because we had this conversation similarly when it comes to leadership and accountability and such topics that fall under the topics of governance. And this is also then the question, okay, how to organize and govern such a hub, yeah, and building the governance structure that is creating stable hubs, yeah, not only now when we run a project, but beyond. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And regarding the Ghana topic, that I think that's interesting. There is the women's, this social entrepreneur is working for many years, is mainly with women that lost their land because their husbands died and they had to give it back to the family of the husband when they're not willing to marry the brother of the husband. Yeah, and then they had to give back the land, which brought them into serious trouble. And she has worked with over 25,000 women, giving them land and setting up structures. And we just explained to her what our learnings and experiences also from the South African prototype and team is. And there are a lot of similarities, yeah, at least when it comes the core challenges which they are facing, yeah, which is, I think, also interesting for us to learn that there is not all individualized, yeah, when it comes to the different countries, yeah, but there is also things that we might be able to transfer from one area to the other, but it's still definitely individual measures we need to take into consideration when we really start something. But I think the good message is here. People find us, whether it's via our network or via our activities. Yeah, for example, the Gita conference and others, we are getting referred, and I think that's good to know. And we are getting also in touch with good people, yeah, and so that's my take on that. Any questions from your side?
Yeah, I find it quite interesting, particularly when you mentioned, Sebastian, that there are certain parallels as well. So definitely what I've always kind of believed in, we definitely can learn from each other, whether we're in Southern Africa or in West Africa, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think that is, yet, I think then it becomes even more urgent that we start driving the project in South Africa, because again, that could kind of things that we get challenged with could be also could be a learning for other countries too.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, so unfortunately I was not in the call last time, but I looked at the recordings, and the guy who visited last time, I think that's also super interesting to have guys like him that are going into the similar direction, maybe with a slightly different approach, but the general idea behind that was the same, which is really interesting. And I think it's great that you, Hermann, found someone like him. Yeah, and I would be interested so how to proceed also from your perspective with someone like him, yeah, to drive that forward, because we are not here to reinvent the wheel, so to say, yeah, and everything that is creating momentum and can speed things up, as you just mentioned, Hermann, is probably a good thing to elaborate.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I would always bring new people in if there's something to be achieved through. But I mentioned, I think, to Thomas, I'm not sure, that I actually met him physically afterwards, a couple of days later. And I have a slight reservation. He's extremely well-spoken, a little bit too smooth for my liking. That's the impression I got when I had the face-to-face meeting with him. And then I checked a couple of facts, and I'm not sure whether he's overstating things and painting a picture, and he's nowhere near realizing that picture. For example, he admitted in the meeting that they had one goal, creating, I think, 2,000 jobs in 200 days, and he mentioned that he failed. But it looks like in other areas that there is a lot of enthusiasm, passion even, but possibly more talk than action.
I think it's important also just to note a bit of the background, and I see Vuyo has joined the call as well. Vuyo can probably back this up, but Ntsieni's pitch last week was very well rehearsed, I thought, and it is almost word for word something that I've heard from 7-8 different people in the last 5 years. It's a drive that was launched especially in Limpopo for the development of community projects, and some of the municipal areas sort of put a lot of effort into it. Hermann, you were involved, or you had a couple of meetings back in the day with the Zanin municipality. And even that, it was along those same lines, along the same concept. And it's almost like it was a very well-rehearsed proposal that they had. But in 7 years, I think, since it started, not one of them has come off. Not one of them. There's little pockets of excellence where they've achieved some things. But yeah, there's a lot of great ideas. And if they can pull something like that off, that would be wonderful. But maybe the link between Motherland and Ntsieni is what is needed. They've always tried to give it a go on their own, which is a great concept, but they haven't been able to do it. But maybe with Motherland behind it, that's maybe the impetus they need to take it to the next level.
So that would be my ask. So what is your analysis? Why there are so many activities, and especially why they fail? Because the concept and the thinking behind is very aligned with what we came up, in the whole process of Motherland. And so, and it's great to see that there are more people thinking like that, but the question is why they fail.
Bureaucracy, paperwork, and own importance. That's generally the failure of a lot of them, because there's so much bribery involved in the municipal areas and the district that the one guy, if he doesn't get a cut out of it, he doesn't allow the other one to proceed. But would have to be taken out of that sort of governmental line and put into the private sector almost.
Is this an impediment we should fear as well, or is there a chance to bypass or overcome it, or just ignore it, or whatever?
I think ignore it and make it happen outside of the government structures.
Yeah, I think that's a very important remark by Wayland. And
who want to say something? Sorry, Herman, that I interrupt you. I saw just Vuyu's hand rising up virtually.
My apologies, Vuyu.
Good evening, everyone. What I agree with what Wayland said. The government, it is better to include them or involve them once any project is running. If you include them from the beginning, they want to control the projects, and most of the time they just distract the production and all those things. And like Wayland has said, a lot of bribery. Another thing, if you involve the government from the beginning, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of this to attend in such a way that you end up losing focus on the project. That's why most of the projects fail. So the government is better, you involve them once the project is running. There they don't have a power over you.
So this sounds familiar to me. This is the same like in corporate structures. They screw you up when you're coming up with an idea too early, but the only chance to overcome is to show that it's running, and they cannot ignore it anymore, that it's done like it's done, right? And so I think that's not only how things work in South Africa, it's the same here in Germany, actually.
Well, and you will experience that in countries like Nigeria as well. I mean, the way of cooperation and getting paid for ideas is very prevalent, as prevalent as it is down here. Going back to Ntsieni, that doesn't mean we are anti. I think, as Wayland said, if he's willing to accept help in the sense of support, in the way of supporting his idea, then it possibly could work. But what I think we need to be guarding ourselves against is taking an enthusiastic statement as a kind of a factual thing. I mean, I said to him when he was here that I would definitely, next time I'm going up into to Venda, I would definitely visit him as well. So it would give me an idea how kind of entrenched his activities are, because I would at the same time ask him to take me to a farm or two he works with.
Mm-hmm.
Look, what I think is becoming critical, I mean, we've been talking about it, we carry on looking at things from a conceptual point of view, but I still believe that we should collectively paint that the whole picture, even if it's only vague, but we kind of need to connect to the whole in order to see and measure our own kind of rate of success eventually. And for me, looking at the whole is a prerequisite to define eventually then the low-hanging fruit and say, okay, how do we work by assisting ABC?
So I'm not sure. I think the full picture should be there somehow. I think we need to get moving, and I totally agree with you on that. But I don't think that we should start with the full picture, because I think we should have that now. Because then we get into the next iteration of theorizing. We need to do something and learn, and instead of going to the next round.
Sorry, I have a problem with my computer at the moment.
Okay. Anybody else wants to offer thoughts on this?
What is the next step? What was discussed as the next step with Ntsieni? Herman, once you've got your computer sorted, was there a discussion around next step
With
and how
Ntsieni,
involved
nothing.
is he going to get?
With Ntsieni, there was nothing discussed. It was just regarding. So the only thing that happened was Herman and Ntsieni met. So now we can make something of that if we want. But I think the next step regarding what we do with Motherland, that leads basically into the document that I shared with you and Herman. Did you have a look at it?
Yeah, I did.
And what are your thoughts about it?
I'm just going to get it up in front of me. Okay. Just want to see my notes that I made. Point 1. One was the community identification. Yeah, okay, so my notes around this was, where do you see us currently looking at that document? We obviously have identified the community. So we've already done step 1, if I'm right. And we've done, to some extent, step 2. And then I think we need to continue where we were on step 2 with Vuyo, where we started identifying the specific challenges in that community, which is what we did a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then point 3, we need to start identifying those specific startups. Once we've got those, yes, that's right, I got that. And I was just going to ask some questions around, but that will only come once we've identified the startups, because the startup in a lot of these instances are often companies that are really struggling to make ends meet in their own sort of way, especially now during these times. So we just have to be very clear on what we're going to, who those startups are going to be. There's a few startups that we've worked on with in the tech world, in agri-colleges, and the first thing they ask you is, what money are you bringing to the table? Because they don't have money to bring into a new project. We need to identify how involved those startups are going to be and what the expectations going to be from those startups once we've identified the specific.
So I think that will definitely, depending on the stage of the startup, and in the end, it's for us, it's about implementing their solutions. Yeah, and maybe we just buy their solution on a monthly subscription basis or whatever product they offer, and we are taking care of the implementation and learning if this solution is really creating the surplus intended from us for the community. Yeah, and then therefore the startup even don't have to collaborate that much. Yeah, as long as they have a product that is feasible, yeah, enough to get implemented. That might look different if we identify something where we say, okay, we support you with access to potential investors or mentorship, etc. But this is something we cannot offer money at the beginning because there is no money. Yeah, so I think we need to differentiate that. And again, I think so far as we have learned, especially in the African context, is to figure out where are the people that self-select to become part of that say this is a great effort and it's worth putting some time into that to make it work. Because otherwise, if someone is selecting, no, I don't get money, I'm not in, so probably it's good not working with them right now.
Yeah. And then step 4, basically, that would just be once we've identified all those startups and everything, then it's the implementation and the monitoring, and how will that be funded in that community.
Yeah, and again, so I think as we have now stripped down the prototype, or let's call it minimum viable product, yeah, not as a product in the specific sense, but in terms of we built a prototype that is from its setup proper to validate our most critical hypotheses as Motherland. Yeah, and therefore we don't need to run a fully fledged accelerator, which is then a totally different beast, so to say. It could create more value, yeah, for all parties involved, but it's way more work, overhead, and managing, especially the relationship with the startups, bringing all the mentors in, la-di-da-di-da, and we all reduce that to the part of implementation of a startup's solution, or for example, it could also be agroecologists that we say, okay, let's implement agroecologists on the ground, right? So because we need an educational a solution, yeah, and an agroecologist is the right partner to do so, yeah. And then it's in the end just the implementation part and learning how that has an effect on our hypotheses and the impact measurement in total, but always coming from the systemic point of view and the implementation of solutions that are necessarily fit together to have a systemic impact.
Yeah, those were the only comments I made out of that. So I think that for me, the logical next step, I mean, those are all sort of things that will continue now, but the logical next step would be to refine that list that we started with the specific challenges identified in that community, and then we need to start identification of the startups.
Agree. Yeah. So Herman is still battling with his connection, he says. Okay. So I think we're clear on the next steps. That means, right? I would like to get some feedback on the video. The video being something we just as with all the other things, we stumbled into a conversation with some people from Kenya. Is it Kenya? Right, Kenya.
Yeah, it's Kenya.
We have a media company. They then went on to give us we told them what Motherland is. They wanted to pitch in some video for free. They did that. It was horrible. We discussed with them, and Anesu contributed a spoken storyline, and they added the video to that. We just received that this morning, and we would love to get your input into what you think about that video. Wait, let me see if I can share with sound properly so that you hear it well. Okay, everybody ready? Here we go.
In the cradle of humanity, things sometimes move more slowly than elsewhere. For a long time, this has led to those of us who call Africa our home lagging behind the rest of the world. But this is changing. Today, thanks to the amazing inventions in digital technology, we now have the ability to combine our knowledge of the land and our culture, steeped deep in the values of Unu, Ubuntu, Utu, with accessible, localized, high-tech that has the potential to transform the way we live. With Motherland, we are creating an initiative that brings together and combines the best of African solutions and startups with people in villages like Vembe in order to bring fundamental change to the economic foundations of the people toward self-sufficiency and self-reliance. Startups from all over the African continent will apply their innovative solutions to improve the situation in villages from the ground up. We believe and hope that with Motherland, we'll strengthen our knowledge base and the education for generations to come, enjoy better health through nutritious food, and last but not least, get to enjoy life much more. We believe that this increase in well-being and positive outlook will be driven by a truly strong local and secular economy. While we are now beginning this journey in one community in Africa, thanks to the digital nature of integrated solutions, we will scale this to other communities quickly, and one day, just maybe one, even beyond the continent. And then once again, we'll be the cradle of humanity, learning from the motherland. I am Anesu, and this is our story.
Okay, so does anybody have some thoughts or feelings about this?
I really like it. I think it's a nice little clip. I do think this sound is a little bit, or her pronunciation is a little bit unclear in a few places. Even knowing the African dialects and the way of speaking, there's a few places where I couldn't really make out what she was saying. Maybe it was just a little bit rushed. She'll have to just maybe redo the voice and just breathe a little and have more like a clear stop at a sentence before the next sentence starts. But otherwise, I think it's really good.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to listen to it once or twice more. I agree what Wayne said, and I also believe that the name Motherland should come up a couple of times more frequently. Not too many times, but I think it's there sometimes from the first mentioning of the Motherland to the next one. There's quite a big gap, and surely one of the things we want to push is the name Motherland, is it not?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I listened to some part of the short video, although I was not really able to really gather all what it was really trying to say. But I think for the ones that I was able to catch, it was talking about how like the contribution of Motherland and also about startups, businesses or initiative in Africa. If it is really clear, I think it makes some sense, but it just depends on how the content is good, really, or the idea behind that video. I think is a very good idea, but it's just unfortunate that it's not too clear that I was not able to listen to all. Maybe it is due to my own internet connectivity here. But so far so good. I think it's a good idea, really. I think so. Yeah.
Thank you, Musa. So Buya, you say she's telling a exciting story with a sad voice, yeah. Okay, I'm sure she can do that. And what about the animation? What did that resonate with you, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm happy. I like the animated sort of storyline. I like that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So we'll I just posted also in our WhatsApp group to have a further discussion, and then we will get back to the team to ask for one more redo with some highlights. One thing I noticed is that when Anesu says high tech, we see a sewing machine. That's not my my image of what high tech actually is. So maybe they can be a bit more precise on that and things like that. So I'm sure we can look at this with a constructively critical eye and come up with some things that can be enhanced. But if nothing jumps into your eye, that's also cool.
So what's really important, that's why I think it also makes sense to share it with the rest of the group, is to get the African view on that. And maybe it's also worth, if you are able to show it to somebody, and just check if they understand what Motherland is all about. Someone who has never heard about Motherland and is indeed also in our target group. And because that's also purpose of the video. And if it works for them, it will also work for potential donors or funders, because if someone in a South African village is understanding it, then hopefully also the potential donors do. But it's, I think, really important to have this African authentic style. So I cannot make so much of a judgment regarding the aesthetics of the video. So I would have done it probably different, but that tells us nothing, because I'm not from Africa. So that's why your feedback is really important.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? Okay. Then I would say we call it a day for today. I'm looking forward to next week, and whenever there's something, some feedback, questions, just let us know. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.